19% of England said they was British-only national identity, with a whopping 57%, 32.4 million, for the first time ever, English-only national identity was added, and 32.4 million of us, a massive majority, said we're English.
Why in our Parliament do Northern Irish MPs, Welsh MPs and Scottish MPs get a voice and get a vote on only English matters when English MPs have no voice whatsoever on the other areas of the UK, because those powers have been devolved to their little parliaments or assemblies? Why do they get a say on how we live in this country? Hi everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest, a gentleman called Graham Moore, who is a member of the English Constitution Party. And we're going to get into that in a moment. First of all, Graham, thanks for coming along and welcome to the show.
No problem at all. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're welcome. I came across a tweet about your party a couple of weeks ago. That was the first time I'd heard of the party, unfortunately. And then I thought they'd be a great guest because I don't know anything about them. And I'm sure there's lots of other people in the country in the same position. And I'm the sort of person, I want everybody to know everything about every political party, because that's the only way we get a choice. That's the only way we can make the best decision that's in front of us, is for people to know the choices that are on the table. And you're a choice and it's on the table. So let's start with the party. Who are the English Constitution Party? When was it started? What's it about? A brief couple of minutes on the history of the party.
So there's a large group of us. There's two elements to what we do. There's the English Constitution Society, which is purely educational on England, the English Constitution, and yes, we do have one. And there's the English Constitution Party. So we set up in 2021. Lots of people was asking us during COVID whether this was legal, what I was doing. And I've studied the Constitution, read law. I'm a layperson, but also a paralegal, a registered paralegal. But I specialise in the English Constitution. That means common law rights, the real rights, not this fanciful stuff that you see on YouTube, and the Constitution of England, constitutional rights, Bill of Rights, the Act of Settlement, etc. And then people started saying we need to create our own party. And then I said to people, do you realise that in 1924, Winston Churchill said the same thing? Our Constitution is being attacked. We are being attacked as a country. And he stood with 10 others in 1924. He walked away from all of the political parties and he stood as an English constitutionalist. He won his seat. 6 of them out of the 10 won their seats. And he really wanted to create this party. And obviously he never got round to it. Other things happened in the meantime.
They did.
As the events unfolded, and we're literally sitting here some years later with a full attack on the English Constitution. Most people should understand that the King takes an oath, actually 2 oaths, to protect the Protestant religion and the Christian faith. Right. So again, a lot of Christians are with us, believe it or not, a lot of pagans. We've also got Scottish members. We've also got Welsh members. We've also got Northern Irish members. We've even got Cornish members, because the principle we believe in is self-determination. In other words, that you as a nation control your own destiny and your own people. Political unions are a big no-no. So the British Union, we don't agree with at all. We want to void the Acts of Union. It's really important that people understand that voiding rather than repeal. So voiding means we're unique in the world. We're 1,100 years old of constitutional history. And guess what? We have a reset position. And the reset position is pre-1707, which means the laws take back all the way down, but everything that was created by the British Parliament is null and void, and has no authority. And it basically gives you all your rights back. You go back to a distributed governance system. A lot of people don't realise that England was a confederacy, because it had a light touch English Parliament, and the actual shires and counties, the people controlled them shires and counties. They had their own county parliaments, if you like, as long as they didn't go against the constitution. So what we did was set the party up, number of different people involved. I've stood in a number of elections. The last one was in the general election. 4 candidates stood. I stood in a place called Chorley in Lancashire against the Speaker of the House of Commons. I've got 1,007 votes. The BBC refused to talk about us. The BBC refused to put our emblem, party emblem, because it's a cross. It says English Constitution Party on their website. So again, we're attacked by the mainstream media. We're attacked by the British. But remember, I want people to understand this. The British regime are a minority. If you look at the 2011 census, 19% of England said they was British only national identity, with a whopping 57%, 32.4 million. For the first time ever, English only national identity was added, and 32.4 million of us, a massive majority, said we're English. So that's what we represent. Our manifesto, these are the good bits. Our manifesto is the English Constitution in its entirety. A member of Parliament's job is to protect the constituents that they represent against the power of the state. All of the people who stand for us, including myself, I'm the leader of the party, which is why I can stand in different places in the country, because people ask me to stand there. And you'd get someone in the Commons that not only will protect your rights, that knows the Constitution inside out, and would stand alongside someone like Rupert Lowe, because Rupert Lowe has actually mentioned the English Bill of Rights on a number of occasions. And what we would do is push that forward. So you're there to represent your constituents, not a political party. So that's really important. We don't have any whips. So no one can tell me, for example, if I'm electing, you can't say this, you can't say that. This is our policy. What I do is represent the constituents, and that's the way it used to be.
Right, very interesting. 2 points jumped at me then. The first point was the fact that BBC would not put your emblem on their website or even speak to you. I ran for Mayor of Greater Manchester last year against Andy Burnham as an independent. I was invited to none of the big hustings, the BBC, ITV, Manchester Evening News. I was basically told, you're an independent, you're not a real candidate, so therefore we're not going to talk to you and give you a platform. And on the day of the announcement of the victor, Andy Burnham won hands down. I came third. I beat Reform UK, the Lib Dems and the Greens. So this independent who didn't deserve a voice, who wasn't given any exposure, still beat 3 main parties in the country. So it can be done. You know, a decent place can be achieved. Now, when you talk about the English Constitution, and the first thing I thought of when I saw your party and quickly read a few lines online about it, was my biggest gripe with the United Kingdom is this. Why in our Parliament do Northern Irish MPs, Welsh MPs and Scottish MPs get a voice and get a vote on only English matters when English MPs have no voice whatsoever on the other areas of the UK because those powers have been devolved to their little parliaments or assemblies? Why do they get a say on how we live in this country? I find that Englishness unfair. I just find it unfair.
Well, let me tell you this, Nick. I find it more than unfair. What you've just said is absolutely correct. You've got Welsh MPs, Northern Irish MPs, Scottish MPs, and British MPs. There are no English MPs. And people conflate, and again, Alexander Zelensky, who, again, the Russian author, talks about the USSR, and when it was disbanded, he had wrote all these books on the Soviet Union. And he said, he was asked a question, and he said his biggest bugbear was the conflation of Russian and Soviet. He said, I am a Russian. I would never and never was a Soviet, right? So when people talk to me, they ask me, or they mention I'm British, I say I'm not British. I'm English, right? And there is a big difference between an Englishman and someone who is British, right? It's a regime, it's a ruling class. By the way, I'm working class, always have been. I've studied law. And again, we are rejected as the largest constituent nation within the United Kingdom. You're absolutely right, but it's actually worse than that. There are no English MPs. The one that come close was a guy called David Amess that used to dress in Templar and go around because I believe he was knighted. He'd ride his horse with a Knights Templar gear on. And again, he was stabbed to death. The British knew that he was targeted and they let it happen. The other person that comes close to being English and mentions English regularly or England regularly is Rupert Lowe. So it is about England. Again, I'm not sure if you've seen my tweet that I've just put out. And again, one of the things we've said, we would detain and deport. We will deport all illegal immigrants and all foreign prisoners, including those from Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. This isn't about race, it's about national origin and culture. England is a distinct country, and deportees will be barred from re-entering England for life. So what I'm trying to say to people is, there is nothing racial about that. We're all the same race. But if you offend, commit an offence, or do something in England that goes against our laws, people must respect that England is a nation, a country, and it has been for 1,100 years.
I agree. What you just said then, if you'd have said that 15 years ago, everybody would have went, well, that's common sense. We over my lifetime, we've slowly lost all common sense in this country. It's been going on for a hell of a long time. It's only more recently we began to notice it and see it. But that statement is perfectly acceptable in every single country in the world, apart from England. That's the only country you're not allowed to say that. And how I know that to be true is I wrote a book last year called England's My England, the fall and rise of the greatest country ever to exist. And when I was researching that book, I realised when we look at the UK, the Union, that at the Scottish referendum a decade ago, nearly 45% of Scots voted to leave the Union. In Wales, I think it's 25% of Welsh people want to leave the Union. And in Northern Ireland, a third of the people in Northern Ireland actually want to join a foreign country. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, am I British or am I English? Because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I'd have said, oh, I'm British. England is part of Britain, but overall I'm British. But as time goes on this last 5 years, I now identify as English because I see how our cousins, our Celtic cousins across the Union, how they view us, not all of them, some of them view us and see us and treat us. And I think it's time that England puts itself first a little bit more than it's ever done, because we seem to be everything we do is always at our expense. It's always putting other people first. We put the Welsh first. We put the Scottish first. Now we put people from Somalia first. We put people from the Congo first. It's never us first. And I think we need a little bit more of that.
Well, I don't disagree at all, as you can imagine. I've always believed I was English. One thing that people should understand is there is a parallel between Remainers that wanted to be governed by Brussels and wanted to be part of that European Union, and people who believe, who are a minority, that they are British, because they still want to be controlled. And the arguments for Remainers and the British are exactly the same. You just mentioned the referendum in Scotland, England is the only country in the constituent nations that has never had a national referendum of its own. And there was a survey done, and the survey showed that 49% of the English, 49% wanted to end the union. And that's why they're terrified of us. And they're terrified of a pure English, let's get this done, let's move away. And by the way, people listening to this must remember, that doesn't mean that the monarchy goes. You revert back to the union, what's known as the Union of the Crowns in 1603. You're still part of the Commonwealth, but you haven't got a political union anymore. The British regime is gone, and so is the bureaucracy, and you would return to a distributed governance system. But just let me add this. Nigel Farage, if he really believed that he didn't want to be part of the European Union, all he had to do was go up to Scotland and help persuade them to leave the Union. He didn't. He did the reverse. And if Scotland had voted to leave the Union, we would have been out of the European Union, no deal, out of the Union. That means void the European Communities Act of 1972, and everyone would have been out of it. We would have been going back to our original formation as a brotherhood of nations of 1603. So the other brief one, I just want to say this to people. Again, I've said about Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, and even Cornwall, to be fair. Nations should, the number one human right is self-determination globally. Indigenous populations globally have rights, and so do the English. But let me just say this. When people say that the English in particular are racist, we're the people who stopped the slaves. We was the ones who freed the slaves, not the British. The British wanted to carry on. Wilberforce, it took 20 consecutive years before Wilberforce finally passed the Abolition Act. We'd already stopped it with the common law of England. So just to make sure people are clear at this point, there's a nation in Africa called Liberia. You can only be a citizen of Liberia if you are a Negro. In other words, if you're white, if you are Asian, if you are Chinese, you cannot be a citizen of Liberia. That place was created by the Americans for the freed slaves to go back to. And in their constitution, they state you cannot be a citizen unless you are a Negro. Now, we don't do that. But they've shown the way if we wanted to do it. We are not racist. We are good people. We are Christians. And what we want is fairness for the English. That's it.
Completely agree. Let's talk about the by-election in Runcorn, which is just down the road from me. And on a side issue, I actually know the former MP there. I used to work for Manchester Council, and I used to sit in meetings with Mike Ainsbury dozens and dozens and dozens of times. He always came across as quite a nice man. You're standing in the by-election. If you're successful, what can the people of Runcorn expect from you as their representative in Parliament?
The main thing that they can expect is that I represent them and not a political party, right? So in other words, there's no whips. When anyone comes to me with a problem, don't forget it's not just me. You set up a team. And it will be local people that I trust from that area that are part of our group and outside of our group that would also assist me. They get a voice in Parliament. So if there's any serious concerns, they need things raised, we will raise them, I will raise them, and we ensure as much as possible that we work with the local authorities. But as you can see with other good MPs, such as Rupert Lowe, and I keep mentioning him because he is a hard-working, good, quality MP. He's also a businessman. He understands a lot of the issues that have gone on in his constituency. But you'll note that the local council, being a Labour council in our area, or even a Conservative council, are pushing back on him all the time. And what we've got to do is make sure we get that balance right again. So I represent the constituents. That's the key point. So if there are issues in the constituency, which we'll go through, I'll be there to speak for them. And there is no one to be, pulling my chain or having me on strings and saying, you can't say this, you can't say that. I'll say whatever the constituents raise to me.
Mm. When I was running for mayor last year, I put a plan together about what I was going to try to achieve in my term. And very quickly, I realised there's no point having plans if it involved the goodwill and working with the 10 councils of Greater Manchester. So everything I was going to do was I was pretty damn sure I could achieve by myself, with a team and with other organisations, but none of it was relying on the councils, because I knew for a fact all 10 councils in Greater Manchester would not have worked with me as mayor. They would have gone out of their way to ensure everything I did failed. So you can't work with people who don't want to work with you, who have got their own agenda.
No, I agree. I mean, just to give you an example, one of the councils, and there's many of them in London, at one of the councils in South London, the CEO of that council is on £950,000 a year.
Wow.
Now, when you get that type of money pushed at you, and the strings around the Labour Party are controlling it, and the money's flowing, it's a money laundering scheme, basically. The same situation happens all over the country. And it's only people like myself, like yourself, that are willing to stand up. I mean, again, I'm just a normal working person, a normal working class man. I never ever really wanted to be involved with politics, but I can see what's happening, and I can see the harm that is being done to English men, women, and children throughout this nation, and we have to try and put a stop to it. So someone has to stand. You can't always say, well, someone else can do it, because they haven't got the same core values as you. And my core values are for the English. And again, I love the North. Most people are aware. I mean, I'm up there quite a bit doing seminars. I've just come back from Northern Ireland doing a constitutional seminar. And once you explain to people what's going on and how it's going on, and tell them, sometimes I have to switch the cameras off when I get some quite awkward questions where I don't particularly want to give them the answer as being recorded, and then everyone's going, wow, is that what's going on? And you say, yeah, it is. So yeah, but one thing I will say, I just want to make sure everyone understands this, and you'll probably understand that this is actually a real bookshelf. It's not a green screen. And again, I do study law, but everyone out there, you should have all been taught your constitution at school. It was removed in the early 1970s because we went into the European Union unlawfully, right? It was unconstitutional. But people say to me, there's no written constitution. There's no constitution. And what I'll do is I'll show them Halsbury Statutes, 4th edition, volume number 10, constitutional law, right? Nice big thick book on the real constitution of England, right? So when people start arguing about your rights, you say the constitutional rights are in this book and they're foundational rights, and you can't go against them. So once you get someone like me in Parliament talking about constitutional rights, talking about your common law rights, then Parliament's got a problem, and that's the way it should be.
Well, we all know for a fact that the system we've got at the moment isn't working. There could be many reasons why it's not working, but we all know it's not working. It's not working for the country. It's not working for the provinces. It's not working for the individual. It's not working for our families. It's not working for our towns, our cities, or the farmers, or it's working for nobody. Some people are getting, a handful of people are getting rich out of it not working, but it's not working for anybody else. And we need a new direction. We need people like you who understand the Constitution, you understand why we're in the mess we're in, to start talking about it. We need national conversations on these subjects, because the status quo and keeping stum and feeling stupid by asking questions that you don't know the answers to. Well, that's the whole point of asking questions, to get the answers you don't know. If you know the answers, there's no need to ask the question. We need change, and we need some national conversations. And I hope your party, and I hope you standing, is the beginning of some of these conversations.
No, I hope so too. And just to make sure your audience are aware, there is no, I always say this at the seminars, my questions and answers go on for hours, right? That's the part I enjoy the most. But I always say to people, ask me any question, and there is no such thing as a silly question. Only intelligent people ask questions, right? The people who sit there and don't ask the question, that in effect is low IQ. When you ask questions because you want to understand something, that's a good sign of intelligence.
Absolutely. So anybody who wants to know more about the English Constitution Party, have a look at the description of this video. I'll put all the links in there. I'll put links to Graham's accounts and things like that. And at the by-election in, I don't know how many weeks it is till a by-election, but thank you for standing. Thank you for giving people an alternative to what's already on offer. And I wish you luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show.
No worries.
Bye-bye.